Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to our show. Anthony here.
And James here. We're taking a dive into the ocean with Pixar today with Finding Nemo, which came out in 2003. One of the best animated films made this century. One of the best all time, probably. Directed by Andrew Stanton and Lee Unkrich. Written by Andrew Stanton, Bob Peterson, and David Reynolds. On Rotten Tomatoes, this is a 99% critic score and 86% audience score. IMDb, it is an 8.2. It is listed at number 154 on IMDb's all-time user rating list, and it won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature.
I can agree with all those ratings. I think that 99% on Rotten Tomatoes, that's like a standout, and very few films get that. But this was a really big movie for Pixar. This was still early days Pixar, and they had a couple of Toy Stories, and then they had Monsters, Inc. before this as well. And A Bug's Life.
Bug's Life.
Yeah. But Nemo was their biggest hit at that point. It was a massive success. So those movies were making like half a bill, 500, 400, 600 million. But Nemo made almost $1 billion, made $940 million. So this was a monumental success for Pixar. It really patted the pocket of Steve Jobs.
For sure.
Yeah, so Finding Nemo, I think, was the nail in the coffin for making him a billionaire before he was with Apple, really. Before he became a billionaire with Apple, he became a billionaire through Pixar because he was the main investor in the company in its very early days. And Nemo was a standout success and proved that Pixar was really here to stay. It was really changing the game of animation, and audiences were flocking to the films, and with this kind of movie, really falling in love with the movie.
Yeah, it made 10 times its budget at the global box office, and its opening weekend was $70 million, which is very high, especially back in 2003. That's very high, but it ended up grossing almost $400 million in the U.S. and Canada, so it just had like a long run of people going to see it back when people still went to the theaters after the first weekend of movies releases. People were still going every week.
And I think what really drew audiences to this film was just from the trailer and marketing and clips they released, you could tell that Pixar was putting out something that audiences had never seen before in terms of the aquatic world, being able to see this animated water and ocean, the ocean life and the creatures within. And so far, they had done animals, but I think Pixar has always been very wise to avoid cats and dogs with their animated films. Those are like if you're going to make an animated movie, I think most people would be like, oh, a dog movie.
Cliche.
Yeah, it's super cliche, especially before Pixar was really out there. Lots of cats and dogs movies. And I think that Pixar's genius was they were always pushing the envelope of what they could do. They're always trying to make something unique and make something special that audiences had never seen before. And as their technology was advancing, they were able to expand their animation in great ways. And the ocean and water was a really amazing test, an experiment for them to try out, and they pulled it off with flying colors.
And it ended up being their first tests were too photorealistic, and it ended up the fish didn't look great next to the water that looked so real, so they actually had to tone it down a little bit after the first test screenings and everything.
They animated the surface of the ocean water, and it looked like real water.
Yeah, and revisiting this movie made me very excited for Avatar 2 because the water sequences in that looks absolutely incredible, and it's so groundbreaking. This was a groundbreaking animated film as well, and Andrew Stanton pitched his idea and story to Pixar head John Lasseter in an hour-long session using elaborate visual aids and character voices. At the end of it, an exhausted Stanton asked Lasseter what he thought, to which Lasseter replied, "You had me at fish." And Andrew Stanton also did the voice of Crush the sea turtle. Stanton never intended to do the voice of Crush, only providing the voice for the film's rough cut, but when it proved popular in test screenings, he decided to do it for the final film. Stanton recorded all of Crush's dialogue lying on his couch in his office, probably to get that like baked out like surfer
Hey,
bro.
surfer bro.
Yeah, surfer bro too. Like voice, yeah, bro.
That's a pretty good one. And Brad Bird and Andrew Stanton are two examples of Pixar directors who also made major Hollywood films. Brad Bird, he actually made the fourth Mission Impossible movie, the one with Tom Cruise climbing on that giant building in India.
Dubai.
And also, Andrew Stanton made John Carter of Mars, which was not a success. He didn't really pull that film off, I think, but he's really great with animated films. A Pixar director also made that Tomorrow World movie. I think it was Brad Bird.
Tomorrow War?
Tomorrow World.
Oh,
with
Tomorrow
George
War-
Clooney.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that was Brad Bird as well. So Disney has always had a very good relationship with Pixar since the 2000s.
Yeah,
because they were
a lot of money.
because they were in negotiations to buy Pixar for years. You know, these kinds of deals take a lot of time to get out, and so Disney was well aware and involved in like what was going on there, who worked there, who was really in charge, and who was directing these films, and obviously kept them on their books for making their own adaptations of their own properties.
They saw those box offices and they're like, we want to get a little taste of that. The mouse wants to get some of that.
Mouse. Because John Carter is a Disney property as well.
Yeah,
they own that one.
Now, before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast, besides using our coupon codes, is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast, where you get awesome perks like personalized videos, Patreon shoutouts on the show, weekly bonus episodes that all patrons have access to, as well as monthly Zoom chats and calls if you're on the $10 and $25 tier patrons also have access to our Discord, as well as our $100 tier patron chosen ones. And not only do we have our chats on there that we interact with every day, we have our watch parties on our Discord. We also just launched our podcast Masterclass online course last year, so for anyone who wants to start a podcast or improve their current podcast, our 22-chapter 46 video lesson course will give you all of the secrets behind the scenes of our show. The link is podcastmasterclass.teachable.com, or go to our website, RaidersOfTheLostPodcast.com. It's right there on the homepage. You can also see all of our content, sources for merch, custom movie posters. Follow, subscribe wherever you're listening. Thanks for tuning in around the world. Hit the notification bells. Leave the 5-star reviews. Now let's get back into Finding Nemo.
We were a good age for this movie when it came out. We were 13 when this came out, so we were like right there, Disney's target audience, and we really enjoyed the film. And also, I want to know what the numbers are for merchandise sales for Finding Nemo, because everywhere you went, every mall, their Disney stores and many other stores, it was Nemo all over the place. Nemo and Dory, from actual like toys to clothing to like backpacks and lunchboxes, like they had everything. And everyone at school like had some kind of Nemo thing at one point, and you saw them whenever you went to people's houses. You saw some kind of Nemo thing. It could be like the bedding of their bedroom, or like even the wallpaper or posters. So there was Nemo merch all over the place, and I think it was because Toy Story did very good with merch, but I think Nemo really destroyed it in terms of merchandise sales.
Yeah, it was all over the place.
Yeah.
And obviously one of the cons to a very popular film with fish or animals inside of it, the same thing that happened with Ratatouille is, well, Ratatouille, you could probably say it's more of a pro, but with the clownfish, everyone wanted clownfish. Kids wanted clownfish for pets, so a lot of clownfish were taken from the ocean and sold as pets, and I'm sure it depleted the natural habitats of those animals and those reefs of wherever they had to find them. I think Ratatouille, it's probably a little more of a positive situation where maybe all these rats didn't have homes to go to, but same thing kind of happened with Ratatouille's Finding Nemo.
But that also had disastrous effects because taking care of clownfish is actually very complicated in terms of the environment you put them in. And many died. Many of these people who bought clownfish weren't prepared for what it took to really keep clownfish healthy and alive for long periods of time. So many died pretty quickly after being purchased and used as gifts.
Oh, that's really
unfortunate. It's ironically just like Darla in this movie, in The Dentist.
Oh my gosh. Hopefully they weren't shaking the bag.
Yeah.
Because that would be horrible anyways. Yeah. But I love Finding Nemo. It's such a feel-good movie. Beautiful animation. I think it's, one of the best movies ever that brings storytelling in our reality to the ocean in like a new way, in an interesting way, because the mysteries of the ocean are so fascinating. The creatures that live in there, obviously we only see from the surface, or if we have goggles, we go underwater. Not binoculars. We have goggles, we go underwater. We can see obviously documentaries and stuff like that. But I think obviously it's an animated film, so the colors are saturated and much more vibrant, and the lighting is very well done and balanced, and camera angles and all stuff like that. So it looks beautiful and fantastic. It's not obviously what the ocean looks like, but it's really fascinating, and I think it piqued a lot of curiosity about the ocean. I'm sure aquarium ticket sales boomed after this movie came out. It's probably the best kind of marketing they could ever have. It's the same thing with like Top Gun, and then Navy recruitment's going up at the same time in 1986 in the late 80s and early 90s. But I think this movie just captured the intrigue that human beings have with the ocean, what's down low in the oceans, what kind of creatures live down there, what kind of habitats there are, and I love how they just infuse human society inside the natural habitats of the ocean. There's a school. There's like a fish that's like a school bus taking everyone around. It's so fun. The currents, and it's really fun how they click on that. And I think also the concept of the NAAA sequences with the the sharks that are like addicted to blood. It's really funny and interesting to just fuse human nature inside these animals.
Yeah, and plus it has a really endearing story about family and love and loss and grief, and it's a very powerful film. And for kids to see things like this, I think is really awesome to see films with deep themes, but also blended together with great comedy and fun action adventure as well. I think that this is all around a perfect film, especially for young kids. I think that, this is up there with Lion King, movies like of that caliber. We chose this movie today because in our Patreon Discord we had a big tournament bracket of animated films
Of all best ones of all time.
And we put like 80 films in there or something, and then Finding Nemo came out on top as the number one choice.
I was surprised.
Yeah, me too. I was expecting Lion King maybe would take home the honors.
Yeah, or Prince of Egypt or something like
that. But honestly,
yeah.
It was an easy cakewalk for Finding Nemo.
Yeah,
they swept like every
match it was in. It was like no contest.
Yeah,
for
even the
Nemo.
finale, even the championship. So I was surprised by that, and I guess
there was probably 18 or something, or like 15 of us at least voting. So it was like a pretty good demographic of the like different perceptions of film and all different kinds of people just voting on it, and just different age groups as well. And Finding Nemo came out on top. I was shocked.
Yeah, so this is definitely becoming a legendary classic, just like The Lion King was in the 90s.
And I gotta say, this is one of the best voice acting casts you'll ever see in an animated film. And we have Albert Brooks as Marlon, who is really kind of the heart of this entire movie. And I don't think it works the same way without him. And actually, Nemo's father, Marlon, was originally voiced by William H. Macy. And according to James B. Stewart's book, Disney War, it was after seeing an early cut of the film with Macy's voice that the Disney CEO at the time, Michael Eisner famously told his board of directors, "This will be a reality check for those guys. It's okay, but nowhere near as good as their previous films. Of course, they think it's great. Trust me, it's not." Director Andrew Stanton recast the role of Marlon with Albert Brooks, and the film went on to get some of Pixar's best reviews ever and became the highest grossing animated film of all time when it came out. So clearly, not that William H. Macy's not a great actor, because he is, but something about Albert Brooks taking on the role of Marlon after him and maybe infusing more life, more warmth, more of maybe a better voice performance into it. But aside from Albert Brooks, this cast is absolutely stacked. I mean, we have also Ellen DeGeneres as Dory, Alexander Gould as Nemo, Willem Dafoe as Gil. We have Brad Garrett as Bloat. Brad Garrett, obviously, from Everybody Loves Raymond. Allison Janney as Peach. Austin Pendleton as Gurgle. Stephen Root as Bubbles, who we all know.
Bubbles.
As from Office Space. What's his name?
Milton.
And then Joe Rampt as Jacques. Vicky Lewis has multiple roles, and the most popular one is Deb. Jeffrey Rush plays Nigel. Awesome performance from him
Great
as well.
Australian accent.
Andrew Stanton as Crush. Elizabeth Perkins as Coral. Nicholas Bird, who's Brad Bird's son, as Squirt the Little Turtle. Bob Peterson, Mr. Ray. Barry Humphries as Bruce. Eric Banner as one of the other sharks, Anchor. And then Bruce Spence as another shark as Chum.
Oh, Eric Banner plays one of the sharks?
Yeah, he plays one of the sharks.
Oh, no way.
So the cast is just so good. Really, really terrific performance.
It's the most
all
impressive
around.
one because it's an ensemble of amazing actors, as opposed to a couple of great actors.
Even just having great actors like Eric Bana as just a small character like Anchor is really great.
I also think something that set this movie apart from everything Pixar had done before it was Thomas Newman's score. Because all the other Pixar movies up to that point, yeah, they have good scores, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. With Toy Story is You Got a Friend in Me, and he did make the music for he composed the music as well. The writer and singer of that song, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But you can't remember the Toy Story music, and it doesn't really make an impact outside of the film. It works for the film, but it has a couple of nice themes, and same thing with Monsters Inc. It's a lot of fun, but Finding Nemo. Hiring Thomas Newman really set this film apart because he's one of the best composers working today. He's made a ton of movies. You'd recognize his scores. He's done all of Sam Mendes' scores, so he's up there.
Skyfall.
So yeah, Skyfall, American Beauty, 1917, all of those Sam Mendes movies, as well as awesome other movies. Road to Perdition's another great one. Excellent composer. And what he did with Finding Nemo was he brought so much beauty and warmth and power to the screen, and great themes, really standout themes. He captured the essence of the ocean and the beauty of the ocean, and when you listen to that score, you're like, wow, this is just beautiful. It's so touching. It suits the tragic moments, and then he's great with the action heavy moments and the moments of fear in the film. And it's a really stunning accomplishment by Thomas Newman. It's his best score to date, I would say. It's really beautiful, and it really propelled Finding Nemo into different territory for Pixar.
And the answer was Randy Newman.
Randy
for Toy
Newman,
Story.
thank you. Another
You got a friend in me. And Thomas Newman's score is incredible. It's very stringy, whimsical, magical, like the ocean is. He just captured, like Anthony said, the essence of it. And it's honestly so good, it like almost is better than the movie in a way. Like on its own, it's just so exceptional. It's a masterpiece of composition, you could argue. It's one of the best in an animated movie I think we've ever heard, especially in Pixar films. And not just the music is just terrific, but the sound design is sensational in Finding Nemo. Like the feeling of like being underwater in a way, just like even just the bubbles, the waves, the currents, just the emptiness that you hear inside. You hear nothing at points, just the darkness and the emptiness and void of space. And I mean, of the space in the ocean, you could say. It's kind of like being in space. And I think they did a really amazing job with just experimenting to get the sound rights for what it's like to hear sounds in the ocean underwater.
And the Pixar team put a lot of work into the research and preparation for making this film. And I did a lot of research, and this film is extremely well researched in terms of its scientific accuracy. And I found a ton of really cool facts regarding some of the story points of the film, as well as characters they put in the film.
Let's hear them. I'd love to hear these cool facts.
So for clownfish, there are 30 kinds of species of clownfish. Marlon and Nemo are ocellaris clownfish, which is a type of orange clownfish that live in sea anemones. I said it right.
Anemones.
Just like in the movie. And on average, a clownfish actually can lay up to 1,000 eggs.
Wow.
And another fun fact about clownfish is Nemo's mom is technically also his dad, because clownfish are all born as males, and they're able to change their sex in order to mate and procreate, and then they can change their sex back to the way it originally was. So it's a really great thing that reminds you of things like Jurassic Park. Amphibians can do that as well. Certain frogs have that ability.
Life finds a way.
Life finds a way. Really cool fact.
Actually, real quick, do you know what an anemone is?
It's environment. It's a plant.
Yeah,
Plant?
that's what
Yeah.
like they like sleep in and live
Yeah.
in. Those are like those are group of predatory marine animals of the order Actinaria. Because of their colorful appearance, they are named for their anemone, a terrestrial flowering plant. And now the relationship between a clownfish and an anemone is a relationship of symbiosis between them two, where the anemone provides the clownfish with protection and shelter, while the clownfish provides the anemone nutrients in the form of waste, while also scaring off potential predator fish.
And actually, those I don't know what you call them. Like they're the dangerous tentacles of an anemone. They are very comparable to those of a jellyfish, and this is actually why in that scene where Dory and Marlon get stuck in that huge crowd of jellyfish, that's why when Dory gets stung, she passes out, whereas Marlon, he's able to get stung many times while rescuing her, because clownfish have a mucous membrane around their bodies that protects them from the anemones they live in, and it's the exact same kind of stingers on the anemones as jellyfish have, so that's why he's able to save her.
Wow, awesome fact. I didn't know that. I always wondered why Dory passed out and he didn't.
That's
so
exactly
much
right.
smaller.
Yeah. And so a great fact about sharks is, so Bruce, one of my favorite characters from the movie, I love his teeth in this movie because it's like tons of rows of scary, jagged teeth. And it's actually accurate to sharks. Shark species have several rows of teeth. And in this movie, Bruce plays a great white shark, and great white sharks typically have around 300 teeth each. And sharks are actually constantly shedding and growing new teeth.
And Bruce actually got his name from the shark that was used to film for Jaws with Steven Spielberg's film. He named the shark after his lawyer, Bruce M. Raymer. And so it's just a great little reference to Jaws to name the main big great white shark, Bruce.
And Nemo's actually named after Captain Nemo from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, no way.
Another famous story in movies set under the ocean.
Who's Marlon named after? Marlon Brando?
No, so there's
No, I'm kidding, different.
Marlon was actually a street name across from Pixar Studios in San Francisco. The street names, one name has Marlon in it and one name has Dory in it.
Oh, cool.
So that they named it after that crossroad
awesome.
there.
I love Pixar.
Yeah. And then so speaking of Dory, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the scene with the anglerfish, which is that glowing fish with like the little light bulb on it. And that's an actual real fish that exists in the ocean. And so in real life, their teeth aren't that big and they aren't they aren't super colorful. They're actually mostly translucent. All of their flesh is very translucent, allows them to hide from their prey as they're getting ready to attack. And in that moment when both Dory and Marlon get like hypnotized by the little light bulb, that's actually accurate to science as well. The anglerfish, what they do is they hold out this like little piece of their bone, and it glows, and it looks kind of like a fish hook. And when fish look at it, they are drawn to it and transfixed to it, and that allows the anglerfish to get close to the prey to grab them.
Hey man, I'm just gonna say, I think you'd be a great science teacher. I'm learning so much, and you're just like so positive, and you're going, and I feel like a little kid sitting like watching a little discussion or a class.
Thanks, man.
Marine biology.
Yeah. And another great scene that's scientifically accurate is the trench scene. So in the first act, when that school of fish and they can change the shapes and stuff, and they're pointing in the right direction, and they give the directions to the current where the turtles are, but they warn Dory, they're like, so there's a trench right there. Make sure you go through the trench, not over it. Through the trench, not over it. She's like, okay, through the trench, not over it. But then she forgets, and that's when they encounter the jellyfish. There are actually tons of huge trenches all over the ocean. As we know, it's the landmass, the crust of the earth under the ocean is just monumentally big, and most of it still hasn't even been explored. But trenches and canyons are very common on the ocean floor, and some of these go down as far as 24,000 to 36,000 feet below the water's surface. So they are extremely deep. And speaking of that current, so the current that the turtles Cowabunga are riding through, that's an actual real current. It's called the East
Australian?
Yeah, East Australian current, also known as the EAC. It's a real thing. And the current travels along the east side of the Australian coast that flows in a south downward direction from the Great Barrier Reef. This transports more than 40 million cubic meters of water per second. It doesn't go as fast as it does in the movie, but it does push down a lot of water. That's all the science facts for today.
Well, I have some interesting animation facts that I'd like to talk about because, again, this was really incredible animation. They had already been doing fantastic animation, obviously, with their films before, but I think this was just a lot more complex, especially with being in the ocean, being with so much water, and the difficulty that came with animating fish and everything like that. And so thanks to Animation World Network, we got some great info. So let's talk about how one of the trickiest problems for Pixar staff was learning to communicate to each other about actions, textures, and other details that are not easy to describe in the English language when it comes to the ocean and everything like that. A new vocabulary had to be developed in order to communicate, and technical director Oren Jacob believes that they never really mastered a vocabulary that describes all the nuances of how the water should look. Once they were able to create realistic water, the art department began to request how the water in a scene should look. Jacob says that didn't make things easy. They might say, it's a little bit too confused, but what does that mean? They were beginning to direct it aesthetically. That challenge continued right up until the last shots of the film. Pixar invited a scientist to present lectures on waves, swells, and other motions. Several staff members took a trip to Hawaii in 2000, so this movie had been in production for a long time, to study water and sea life. They ended up using reference footage from that trip to describe conditions above and below the surface. Another difficult obstacle for the Pixar animators was figuring out how fish actually swim. So they spent a lot of time at aquariums and spent time with scientists and marine biologists to understand the movements that fish make when they're swimming, when they're moving, why they make certain movements, whether it come down to skeletal muscular structure. They also had to figure out how to make fishes act because it hadn't really been done too often in animated films. And so they looked to Bambi, which came out in 1942, as it didn't use a lot of anthropomorphic animals. And to get fish to act, Pixar had to take liberties. In Finding Nemo, the face becomes very expressive, so they humanize the faces in the characterization process. There is lip sync. Brown says we have more of a human face on the fish. The fish's face isn't that compelling. A real fish doesn't have any flexible lips, just a hard membrane. There's no eyebrows, which in the film they obviously have eyebrows and lips and muscular structures.
Yes, I mean, you have to watch the animals emote. So that's something that the new Lion King adaptation, that's what I found cold about the movie. It's sensational CGI, what they pulled off, but it never felt like I could have really emote or connect with the animals in that movie because they were so photorealistic, and it just didn't make sense to my brain watching them speak, not like the animated film. So I think it's important with an animated film, you can take liberties to change the characteristics of an animal's face to make it more relatable, make human beings connect to that emotional element within that soul of the animal. And I think that Lion King, the new one, was lacking in that.
And they also had to, instead of using limbs from an animal or a mammal, they had to use fins and parts of a fish's body to act as like expressive limbs and arms and fingers and hand movements like we see from human beings to understand what they're doing.
But it's not like Shark Tale where they're just like really long. It's like they kept it practical to like what the dimensions of that animal's fins were like, and they had to work around that. And so like Nemo with his tiny fins, when he's trying to do something, he has to like move his entire body. He doesn't have arms that can like reach.
Exactly. And one of the most difficult shots for the animators to make was the jellyfish sequence, which had 77,000 jellyfish, meaning it was quite the challenge for both the technical crew and the artists. It's because with jellyfishes, nothing is static. Everything moves. Water, wind, and their swimming movements influence their form. That resulted in every frame being a different composition, so it was hard to create actions and forms that matched up from shot to shot. Past Pixar features starred characters that looked the same from shot to shot, and their movements and appearances were easy to match up. Now they had to deal with ever-changing forms. To create the shots that matched up, they had to create key elements by hand to avoid confusing the audience. They animated parts of 1,200 jellyfish. They were carefully placed in the foreground or middle ground of scenes so the cuts would look natural to the audience.
Also, for the challenging part of the jellyfish sequence is jellyfish are translucent. And that's something they had never done before with their animation programs. And so they created an entire new system of shading, which they called Translurancy, which was see-through but not completely blurred. So it's like a frosted bathroom window. And that's something they had to literally develop that technology for this sequence alone. And rendering a frame, just one frame of this movie, it could last up to 4 days because of the complexity of the underwater environment, also combining that with sunlight coming through the water and hitting fish scales. So it was a very complicated editing process and animation process. There's just so much information in every single frame. That's why it took so long for this movie to finally get finished, because they spent years just rendering it.
And that's why it's taken James Cameron 15 years to make Avatar 2 going forward, because it's taken that long to get the super photorealistic water and environments that he wants for the new Avatar sequels.
What I noticed from a behind-the-scenes photo of Avatar is they showed a photo of Kate Winslet, Zoe Saldana, and Sam Worthington, and they're in the water of a giant tank, but then there are these like thousands and thousands of these little plastic balls that are floating atop the surface of the ocean. So I'm sure they're using that as a guidance for how the surface of the water moves and interacts with the characters.
Yeah, because just to stay on Avatar 2 for a little bit, the thing with it is, and I think this is why it's taken so long, is the main difference I see between Avatar and then Avatar 2, The Way of the Water, is Avatar looked realistic, Avatar 2 looks real. Yeah. It looks real as hell. Yeah. Looks great. Looks like real creatures that actually exist. Even just the stills. It's shocking how incredible it is. I think it's going to absolutely blow people's minds back. Obviously, the trailer came out in theaters, paired with Doctor Strange. But I think we have no idea what we're prepared for. We're not prepared for anything.
Yeah, that's a great way to phrase it. I like that.
Thanks, man. Came up with that myself. Might have to tweet that.
Do it. Finding Nemo was also one of the most successful movies of all time, like you said, but also it might be the most successful animated film ever made when you factor in DVD sales. So when Finding Nemo was released on VHS and DVD back in 2003, yes, VHS was still being used back then. This was before Blu-ray too. So the DVD release on its first day sold 8 million copies just on the first day. Now that surpassed Spider-Man's record for single day DVD sales. Now back then, when a movie came out, it didn't come out on streaming. You couldn't rent it anywhere except for maybe Blockbuster, but you would go to like Best Buy or a similar store and you'd buy the movie.
You still had to wait like 8 to 10 months at least.
Exactly. So like that's what everyone did when a new movie came out generally, if they wanted to own it. If you didn't want to own it, you would go to Blockbuster. But everyone wants to own Spider-Man, so everyone bought it.
It was a lot more common to buy movies.
Exactly. And they were kind of expensive, but they weren't that expensive. And then so it beat Spider-Man. And then that also beat Monsters, Inc. for the single-day record for an animated film. And then within 2 weeks, it became the best-selling DVD of its time, selling 15 million copies and beating out Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, just in 2 weeks.
Insane.
In 2 weeks. And then
That's crazy.
Yeah, and then over that decade, Finding Nemo sold 40 million copies of DVDs and VHSs, and it still, to this day, holds the record for the most DVDs sold of all time.
I would love to know what profit they make off a DVD.
It's much more than a movie ticket.
Yeah, I'm sure,
It's,
because they're probably doing everything.
It's about
except for
80%.
distribution.
It's 80%. They're producing it and distributing it, and the stores are just getting a cut for selling it. It's not like a movie theater shares the profit of the film. Like the studio is getting the vast majority of the profit on DVD.
That's a shock. I wonder if they made more. They probably made more off the DVD sales than off ticket sales, maybe.
No, I'd say because if you multiply 40 million times like $8 of profit per DVD, that's not 940 million.
I was thinking like a little more,
That's-
like
it's-
1999 when they first come up, but still under.
Yeah,
Anyway,
movie theaters
shocking.
are where it's at.
It's shocking
Movie
how
theaters.
much. Plus rentals. So I mean, throwing
Yeah.
rentals. Yeah, that was probably huge.
Oh yeah. Rentals. They definitely made some money too. They get a portion of that.
So it's just a wildly
massive
successful
success.
film.
Massive
Huge.
success.
And the storyline of Finding Nemo, it's really solid. We've all seen this a bunch of times, but let me run through a synopsis for you.
I'd love to.
A clownfish named Marlon lives in the Great Barrier Reef and loses his son Nemo after he ventures into the open sea, despite his father's constant warnings about many of the ocean's dangers. Nemo is abducted by a boat and netted up and sent to a dentist's office in Sydney. While Marlon ventures off to try to retrieve Nemo, Marlon meets a fish named Dory, a blue tang suffering from short-term memory loss. The companions travel a great distance, encountering various dangerous sea creatures such as sharks, anglerfish, and jellyfish in order to rescue Nemo from the dentist's office, which is situated by Sydney Harbor. While the two are searching the ocean far and wide, Nemo and the other sea animals in the dentist's fish tank plot a way to return to the sea to live their lives free again.
I thought it was genius to set the second plot in the dentist office because that's like a terrifying place for kids.
Yeah, but also what I love about the fish tank sequences, it turns into a great escape movie.
It's a
like
heist
a prison
movie, yeah.
a prison escape movie. It's awesome.
It's like
so
an
fun.
Ocean's movie.
Yeah, or like Escape from Alcatraz in a fish tank.
And I love in like a Mission Impossible movie where when Gil's talking about the plan, we're seeing it played out.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I loved it.
I think one of the great strengths of this film outside of animation is the dual plot storyline, because Nemo has his own storyline and his own plot versus and against Marlon and Dory's plot, and they really just connect and weave really well together, and they kind of contrast each other, and they both learn life lessons away from each other. Like Marlon's a great father, but he's very overprotective and he doesn't want anything to happen to Nemo, and tells Nemo he can't do certain things because of his small fin, whereas Nemo needs to learn that he can do things, he can take chances, he has to learn to what kind of potential he has. That's why there are great sequences like when they're with the turtles and Crush tells him, just let's see what happens, let him go. And
that's a great example because Crush has a great relationship with his son, the little turtle, and Marlon watches them communicate and they're like friends, and he's like, oh, me and Nemo don't have that. I want that.
It's because he's overprotective, and like when Squirt falls out of the current, and Nemo's like, oh my God, we have to go find him. Then Crush is like, nah, bro, let's like see what he does, man. Let's see how he responds. And then Squirt makes his way back to the current. So he's letting Squirt, even though he's small and weak, giving him a chance to prove himself and to succeed at something, where Marlon has been holding Nemo back, not letting him succeed, not letting him try things that are outside of his comfort zone.
And that's what Gil provides Nemo. He challenges Nemo, and he puts Nemo into situations where he has to overcome conflict and obstacles. And
he's kind of using him as well.
Yeah, as well. He's using him. I wonder how many fish have died. try to
from Gil corrupting them. You're right. We need you.
He's
man.
ready. he's been here for 6 hours. He's ready.
He's the only one who can fit.
I love it. But Nemo needed that. He needed to prove to himself and actually do something on his own. And I think Albert Brooks really sells that really well because he's super protective and neurotic and a worrywart.
You understand why.
Yeah, you understand why.
In the opening.
That can be annoying. I think that's why William H. Macy's voiceover maybe didn't work. Maybe he wasn't able to portray the heart and love along with those characteristics that Marlon has.
Maybe it sounded like he was just complaining the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been sounding like someone like very annoying, whereas Marlon comes off as it's endearing and touching, and you know where he's coming from, and there's a lot of pain and sadness behind that characteristic of overprotectiveness.
I agree. Now, before we continue, how about we head on into our intermission?
Oh, yeah,
then we'll get back to the plot.
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost podcast is brought to you by our good friends at manscaped.com, the leaders in men's grooming, who are turning your shower routine into your favorite part of the day with their new ultra premium collection. Also, get their Lawnmower 4.0 groomer because you can use it in the ocean. It is waterproof, so use it in the shower anytime. It's got a built-in light, waterproof, skin safe, 7,000 RPM motor. We've been telling you to get it for about a year now, so get on that Lawnmower 4.0 groomer and shave yourself at the bottom of the ocean. The ultra premium collection, on the other hand, is the ultimate wet goods bundle. It's got deodorants, yes, actual armpit deodorant from Manscaped that me and Anthony are now obsessed with. It's the only deodorant we'll ever use. Body wash, which we're body wash, body wash, which we use every day, obviously. 2-in-1 shampoo, conditioner, hydrating body spray, and a free set of Manscaped lip balm. Head on over to manscaped.com. Use our coupon code Raiders of the Lost at checkout. You'll get 20% off and free shipping on your entire order today.
And you know our other amazing sponsor, movieposters.com. Use our special promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today. They have a gigantic selection of pretty much every movie and TV show imaginable. Everything from a Marvel movie to a Pixar movie to your favorite classic. They got you covered. As well as a selection of all sorts of sizes, framing, and backlighting. Whatever your poster needs are, they got you covered. Again, head on over to movieposters.com and use our special promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today.
All right, let's begin the intermission with our movie quote competition.
Let's hear it.
Ready? Well, this is it, old boy. I hope you don't mind if I go out speaking the kings.
What is this shit? Can you say it again?
Well, this is it, old boy.
I got it. It's Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
Great one. Good quote. Damn good scotch. Damn good stuff, sir. Here's my quote. It's two characters. So the first character is shouting from outside a fire escape of his apartment in a rough part of Queens, New York. That's the setup. Good morning, my neighbors. Hey, F you! Yes, F you too. They're swearing in the movie.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
I just didn't want to swear.
But he's saying it positively.
Yeah.
Huh.
Good morning, my neighbors. Hey, F you. Yes, F you too.
Sounds so familiar. Honestly, I'm not sure. It just sounds really familiar. Bruce Almighty? No, I don't know.
Coming to America.
Oh my God. Got me. All right, guess this movie release year. Concussion.
Concussion.
That was like I have a concussion.
That was 2017.
2015.
Really?
Yeah, it was.
Wow. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Okay, guess this movie.
Sick reference, bro. Your references are out of control. Everyone knows that.
Guess this movie release year. The Nutty Professor.
2000.
1996.
Oh man, that's old.
Yeah.
I was thinking Dr. Dolittle, I think. It's like 01. All right, movie pop quiz time. It's the list, which is your favorite kind of answer in quiz question.
No, I love lists, just not 6 in a row.
Name every adult actress who has played Sarah Connor in the Terminator franchise.
Movie franchise or TV franchise?
Terminator franchise.
Linda Hamilton. What's her name? Cersei Lannister's name. Oh, what's her name?
Definitely not Cersei Lannister.
Oh, man. Well, there's 2 Game of Thrones actors that played her. Shoot, what are both of their names?
Yeah, you're right.
What are their names? Oh, what's her name?
You only know their character names. Oh my gosh.
No, I know them so well.
Anthony loves Game of Thrones too.
Laura.
This is funny.
Laura.
I can't believe you. I thought you'd get this in a second, bro.
Me too, man.
Anthony. I don't know if you guys noticed. Anthony's also read the books. Huge Game of Thrones stan.
Oh man, I'm just blanking right now. What's Cersei's name, and then what's Daenerys Targaryen's name?
They're pretty. Well, the latter is very famous.
I'm blanking. I'm gonna hate
Lena
myself.
Headey.
Lena Headey.
Lena Headey. And then Emilia Clarke.
Emilia Clarke.
Can't believe you didn't get her.
I blanked, man. Oh
So
my God.
Linda Hamilton is the OG Sarah Connor. Lena Headey was in the TV series.
Yeah.
And then Amelia Clark was the reboot Sarah Connor.
Yeah,
Soft
Salvation.
reboot.
No, not Salvation. The one after that.
Genesis.
Yeah.
And then Willa Taylor also played Sarah as a 9-year-old in an odd alternate reality flashback in Terminator Genesis, where she's saved by a T-800.
Oh, I can't even remember that scene.
Yeah,
I blotted my memory of that movie out of my life.
movie out. Yeah.
It's terrible. Yeah, just erased it from my mind.
Good question.
Great
though, right?
question.
Yeah.
Great question.
Thanks, man.
I would have gotten it wrong though, because I wouldn't have gotten the fourth one, even if I remember their names.
Oh, that's why I said it. I mean, it's just a child actress. Like,
Okay,
who
yeah.
could remember that name?
Yeah. I have a photographic memory. But man, good one. You got me.
Thanks.
Okay, here's my quiz question. I have phlegm in my throat.
Here's my.
I'm not allowed to clear my throat.
It's just the timing.
not allowed to clear
the
my
timing is funny.
What famous Disney character did Eddie Murphy voice in a beloved animated film?
Disney. Eddie Murphy. Because DreamWorks isn't Disney, so
It's not Shrek.
it's not Shrek.
Famous Disney movie.
I feel like he's in Emperor's New Groove. No. Can I get another shot?
You can get another shot. It's a tough
See.
question.
This is a tough question. It's got to be an older one. I don't know.
He voiced Mushu in Milan. The
Oh,
little dragon.
good call.
Yeah.
We've got a great 5-star review from Ian Baller. Says, love you guys. This is the best movie podcast out there. The knowledge of film that these guys have is amazing and a little weird. Another thing y'all have done is given me appreciation for international films. I love you guys. Appreciate it, Ian. So glad you were watching international movies.
And our godfather, shout out,
Who's it going to be?
Alexander Biscardi. Thank you so much for being a Godfather patron.
Alexander! Oh my goodness!
You couldn't refuse.
You became a godfather.
Alexander.
It's like a demon. Alexander, thanks.
But thank you so much for joining our Patreon and making it a Godfather tier. This keeps the lights on for our show.
What did Alexander pick for their episode?
La Dolce Vita.
Whoa!
Federico Fellini's great Italian film. It's really awesome, beautiful cinematography, amazing set design, and excellent acting. It's a terrific film, and we can't wait to review La Dolce Vita for you in your special personal episode.
So excited to talk about. I actually just listened to the score of it randomly last week.
Nino.
So good, Nino Rota.
Yeah.
And on this again, Alexander, thanks so much. Can't wait to talk about it. On this day in film history, today is May 16th. In 1929, the first Academy Awards happens. Wings, Emil Jannings, and Janet Gaynor win. In 1986, Top Gun, directed by Tony Scott and starring Tom Cruise, premieres. In 2001, Mulholland Drive premieres at Cannes Film Festival, directed by David Lynch. In 2002, Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, is released in cinemas. In 2013, Star Trek Into Darkness is released. In 2014, Godzilla is released. In 2019, Rocket Man premieres at the Cannes Film Festival.
Love that movie.
And happy birthday to the late Henry Fonda, Danny Trejo, Pierce Brosnan, and Megan Fox.
Danny Trejo died?
No, the late Henry Fonda, and then Danny Trejo.
Oh, happy birthday to him.
Yeah. No, yeah.
I'm a boathead.
I know you are.
I imagined a list of like notable deaths.
I do this every episode. I say the late if it's
I know.
someone's.
I'm an idiot.
I know, it's all good. It's okay, man. My streaming recommendation is on Amazon Prime. It is Inside Llewyn Davis, written and directed by the Coen brothers, starring Oscar Isaac, who is on fire. That man is hot. The man is hot right now.
My streaming recommendation is also on Amazon Prime. They just got A Quiet Place Part 2. Excellent movie, amazing sequel. Shh, be quiet when you watch it. Be quiet. But it was one of the first movies we saw after the lockdown. Before the lockdown happened. No, after the lockdown.
After the lockdown.
Yeah, and it was just like one of those movies
Because it was about to come out that month.
Yeah, it was after Green Knight, and then we saw A Quiet Place Part 2, and it was like, wow, the movies are back. It was such a great movie to see.
All right, let's get back into Finding Nemo. We were talking about Nemo and Marlon and their separate storylines, and I think Dory and Marlon's is so fun. I think it's probably the biggest strength of the film is the relationship between Marlon and Dory, because I think Dory's one of the most iconic and one of my favorite Pixar characters of all time. She is so funny, and I was surprised when I saw how incredible Ellen DeGeneres did as a voice actor, especially the dramatic stuff. Because I'd only ever see her do comedy and stand-ups and stuff like that at the time, so I didn't know if she'd bring up the big guns when it came to the emotional acting. But she makes some tears come out for sure. It's a very emotional performance and an emotional movie at times, and I think that their back and forth and their companionship, it's so endearing. It's fun. Marlon can't stand her at first, but then they really grow this beautiful friendship by the end of the film, and it's really incredible to watch their journey together.
And the connection that she makes with Marlon and Nemo eventually helps repair most of her memory, where she's able to remember things again. And Andrew Stanton, actually, he envisioned Dory as a male character, so he was looking to cast an actor, a male actor, but then he watched an episode of Ellen DeGeneres' show, and in that show, that episode, she was talking, and he saw her change the subject 5 times before she finished one subject, and he was like, before she finished one sentence, and he was like, "That's Dory. I gotta get her."
Yeah,
she's
perfect. Terrific in this movie.
Yeah, she's a scene stealer.
Every line that comes out of Dory's mouth is just either hilarious or just very sad, because there are some emotional points, especially with her past, how, she lost her family, she doesn't remember how, but it's so incredible that you could argue just out of one line of dialogue, they created Finding Dory, the entire plot of that, which is so great.
I love when she's trying to remember Nemo's name multiple times in the film. She calls him like Fabio at one point.
So funny, and like speaking whale.
She's the most intelligent fish in the world. She can read it. She can speak whale.
Yeah,
fish can actually communicate through clicking in different like physical means.
Cross-species communication, or does it have to be in the same species?
Well, the verdict isn't out on that, but whales communicate like that, like she does in the film. But there is kind of some research to show that maybe different kinds of fish can communicate with each other in certain ways.
Yeah, and they do grow together very much. Marlon can't stand her, but then I think the jellyfish sequence is a really important moment where Marlon goes back and saves Dory when she's being engulfed by all the jellyfish. Then also when the whale comes and she's speaking whale and he thinks she's crazy, and she's like, "No, trust me, just let go, it's going to help us." And he doesn't realize that the whale is going to bring them to the docks at Sydney, and he has to just finally let go. That's like the biggest moment for Marlon after the interactions with Crush and Squirt, and then now with Dory with the whale, to finally let go, let things happen, and just have to just go on and just see what happens. And again, like I keep saying the same thing 3 times.
Well, Marlon's kind of the antagonist to himself, because if he listened to Dory more often, there'd be less conflicts. For example, that the trench that the fish told them to go through it, and she's telling him, she can't remember exactly what they said, but when they're at the trench, she's like, "No, I'm pretty sure we should go through this. I have a feeling we got to go through this and over." And he's like, "No, it's a huge, deep trench. We're going over it, Dory." So his inability to trust anyone and he has control issues and his neuroticism prevents him from trusting anyone else's opinion. And if he trusted Dory more often, they'd be in less conflicts.
And then Nemo, after he gets captured by the fisherman, which turns out to be the dentist, and he brings him to the...
And ironically, it's Marlon's behavior that causes that to happen. He embarrasses Nemo.
Nemo goes to touch the butt.
Yeah, it's like in spite of his father, it's the reason Marlon's at fault for it ever happening.
Exactly. So then he gets captured by the scuba diver, who's the dentist.
Scuba Steve.
Scuba Steve. Scuba Steve! Goddamn you! Kangaroo song!
Kangaroo song!
All right. Way off topic. Sick reference, bro. And then Nemo wakes up in that fish tank with all these new fish, and he's scared, but he really just comes into his own and like finds out who he really is, because he gets initiated, and Gil is a great leader.
I love the volcano.
Shark bait. He gets his name Shark Bait, and like he becomes a member of this little tribe of fish that are just stuck in this fish tank, and they have that great escape plan where they're gonna block the filter, and they need Nemo to be able to do it, and they fail the first time, but in the middle of the night he's just kind of thinking about all the things that his father said to him. He just does it on his own without the help of anyone else, and they get the filter to stop, and then they stink up and dirty up the water inside the fish tank. And I think it's the starfish. It's like, "Do you realize that we're swimming in our own?" And then it cuts real quick. But unfortunately, the dentist gets a better like electric powered filter and everything like that.
I also love how they're all experts in dentistry when they're talking about the kind of mechanism the dentist is using for a surgery.
Especially Nigel when he pops in the room. He's like, "Oh, what's he using today?" "Oh, he's been favoring that one lately." And I love the sequences with these fish in the fish tank, even though we're in one location. It's so acceptable because all these little creatures, they're so personable. They have very unique personalities. My bubbles. And Jacques with the cleaning.
Yeah, I like him cleaning.
Like the French, he's like a French crab, and like he's sparkling clean and shining afterwards. So I love all the characters inside the fish tank, and they really make it such a great sequence.
Yeah, and they're like a little family. It's terrific. But also Pixar knows really perfectly how to craft like a third act of a movie because the third act of a movie is when a character should like lose everything. And it's when Marlon, he's in the dentist office with Nigel, and then he sees Nemo. Nemo's in the little fish bag, and he's playing dead so that Darla doesn't take him home. But Marlon thinks Nemo's dead for real, and that is just devastating to him.
It's dark.
Yeah, it's super tragic. And then Nigel brings Dory and Marlon back to the ocean, and at that point, Marlon thinks he has lost everything. And then it brings great stakes out because then Nemo has to try and get back to Marlon before he goes off too far away and Nemo never finds him again. And I love the fish tank crew helping Nemo, bursting him out of the fish tank and down that tube. And it's a great conclusion where Nemo, not only does he reunite with them, and I think most other movies they might end it there, but to show a huge conflicting situation of Dory getting trapped with the other fish inside that giant net, and Nemo using his newfound confidence and abilities to command that entire family of fish to fight through the fish net and break down the boat and escape into safety and freedom. That's something that Marlon would never imagine Nemo could ever be possible to do.
Plus, the just keep swimming, Dory's line is actually put to really good use. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. And they just push. I mean, honestly, the fisherman just had a really bad day, too. Yeah. Poor guy, probably tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage. He's got
kids to feed.
He's got kids to feed. Yeah. You know, he's probably got a divorce and alimony he's paying. Like, poor guy. Although he's a villain in the film. You know, the humans are antagonists in this world, obviously. Yeah. And how about we go over some of our favorite, like, moments and scenes and stuff, and we'll get more into the story when we do that.
What's your favorite shot of the movie?
I think my favorite shot is probably when the whale is coming up behind Marlon and Dory. It's actually a really good shot where it's out of focus and then it starts to come in and creep in. But it's also really funny because I love when Dory's like speaking well. She's like, and Marlon thinks she's crazy. And she's like, oh, wait, he hears me. And then they're inside the mouth and everything. But I just love when the whale shows up behind them because I think whales are fascinating because they're absolutely impossibly enormous creatures that I feel like, how does that exist? And it's in the ocean. It's very scary if you were next to one, I think, even though they seem to be gentle, but it's just like, those things are huge.
Yeah. My favorite shot is actually a similar shot. It's the reveal of Bruce, also behind both Marlon and Dory. And I think when he swims up to them and then his giant big smile and you see those razor sharp teeth, it's funny and scary simultaneously. It's a terrific shot.
It is.
What is your favorite scene of the movie?
I think this was an easy pick for me. I'm going with the shark NAAA sequence where it's great humor because it's kind of like a show like SpongeBob where there's a lot of great adult humor in this movie that goes completely over kids' heads. Most kids watching this that are like under 10 probably have no idea what this is supposed to like replicate. Yeah. Where it's Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous and these sharks are like, fish are friends, not food. They're addicted to blood or they're addicted to eating fish. And like that's why as soon as Bruce sniffs the blood up his nostril, do sharks have nostrils? And this one does.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
They smell blood.
Yeah. And as soon as he smells it, he's like now on like an addicted relapse. His
eyes go black.
He's relapsing. Yeah. He's on like a feeding frenzy, and he has to eat all the fish he can at the moment. And the other ones are trying to stop him. It's just like it's very funny satire on the environment of AA and NA.
Yeah, I actually picked the same scene, the entire sequence, and especially the chase sequence, because I think it's a terrific chase. It's super scary, but also funny with with Bruce's friends trying to stop him. And they're like, "He's really a nice guy once you get to know him."
Also, with the explosions from the underwater mines,
excellent,
efforts, really cool. But then, like a very tasteful fart joke where the bubble pops up next to Nigel, and the other pelican swims away. He's like nice.
I think that was the showcase, the biggest show-stopping moment of the movie. I think it's terrific because it blends both comedy and horror together. This movie has moments of like really good scares and fear, especially with the anglerfish. But I think Bruce chasing them is really scary at times. And I love how one of the friend sharks, he accidentally ate his fish friend.
Yeah.
And so Bruce gives him Marlon as the new friend.
Isn't the other fish like super scared to be there?
Yeah,
too?
she's like this tiny green fish that is shivering. That he actually runs off when no one notices. I loved it. Next up, who is your favorite character?
I'm going Nigel. I think
Nice.
Nigel's super funny. He's kind of like me. He just talks really fast and like is just constantly bringing up different topics. Great accent by Jeffrey Rush.
Yeah.
And I think he's just a great character because he's sort of like a leader among the pelicans or just around the dock. He's like very well respected. And he really just has a good heart because the story of Nemo missing in the ocean and it's being spread throughout the entire ocean, which is so fascinating and cool. And without Nigel, the reunion probably doesn't happen because he saves them from the pelicans on the docks. And then he's like, get in my mouth. and Nemo's like, and Marlon's like, I'm not getting in there. You're crazy. And then he brings him up to the dentist office and everything. But I think Nigel's super funny, great leader. And unfortunately for Nigel, at the end of the movie, he doesn't know that Nemo survived. The last moment of
You're
Nigel,
right. He thinks that
he's like,
he thinks they failed.
he's saying bye to Dory and Marlon, and he's
Then he
like, "I'm
flies off.
sorry, your kid's dead, man." Then he flies off.
He's like, he's gonna live the rest of his life thinking that he failed them.
Yeah, I know, right?
My favorite character is Bruce the shark. I just love the idea of a shark that's trying to go off fish and trying to go vegetarian.
Yeah, they're vegetarian.
I think it's so funny. It was a genius concept, and like I said, it's my favorite sequence of the movie, and I think that it's just like such a standout character. It's really fantastic. Next up, who was your favorite animal portrayed in the movie?
Obviously, I think the shark with Bruce as the shark because I love sharks and then the concept, everything you just said, the
teeth, yeah.
but just the idea of a shark that's not going to eat fish anymore.
No, just talking about like animal portrayed in terms of like animation, what it looks like.
Oh,
yeah. What was your favorite animal?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'll start. I'll go first.
Yeah, you go. Well, I already know my answer.
Who's it?
I'd probably say the jellyfish. I
Nice.
think they did a terrific job with the animation, and I think jellyfish are really interesting and beautiful. And also, it's just it contrasts how dangerous they are, and so I think they really captured that so well.
Beautiful but dangerous.
Yeah.
Love that. I picked the anglerfish because it's super scary and terrifying and funny and weird looking, and I love the glowing light, and I think the design of the creature was really fantastic. It's like a great movie monster, and it's really scary. I remember being a kid and being terrified of it. I think they did an excellent job, and it was smart enough to make it translucent. I think making it colorful was a great idea for the animation. I love the anglerfish in the movie, so that's my favorite animal they created. Okay, what's the funniest moment of the film?
There's so many to pick. Like I think like Bubbles, like my Bubbles, that's super funny. But honestly, everything that Dory says just cracks me the hell up. And like the speaking whale, it's probably one of my favorite parts in general. But like
Fabio?
Escape. Like I still quote Escape.
Oh, it looks just like Escape.
Just like to this day, like squishy, it'll be my squishy, and it'll always be my squishy. Like stuff like that. So funny. So I think just everything Dory says.
I like speaking of Dory, I like the moment when we learn that Dory has short-term memory because she tells Marlon, "Oh, I saw a boat. It went just that way." And he's like, "Great." She's like, "I'll lead you there." And then they're swimming, and then Marlon's following her. Then Dory, she's swimming straight forward, leading him, and then all of a sudden, we don't know this but she forgets what she's doing. So then she slows down, starts swimming more, just having fun and enjoying the current. And then she notices Marlon behind her, and she's like, "Someone's following me." And she's like, keeps looking back, and she's swimming really fast. And then she's like, then she confronts him. He's like, "Why you follow me? Huh? And it's a zoom in every time you see her face, and she gets closer and closer. It's so funny. I thought it was great. What's the scariest moment of the movie?
I think Nemo attempting to jam the filter and then almost getting stuck in the tubing is really scary for an audience member.
Great pick.
They pull him out, but
Yeah.
it's still kind of like nerve-wracking. You're like, what if he doesn't make it out of there?
Very good pick. I picked the anglerfish. Yeah, the reveal of the anglerfish with his giant teeth just like seething for the fresh meal ahead of it. Okay, what's your most underrated aspect of Finding Nemo?
It's got to be Thomas Newman's score. It's sensational. It's really beautiful, and it really just brings this movie to another level that I think if you just have an average score or an average composer, just it doesn't make it as good as Finding Nemo is, but I think it's one of the greatest strengths of the film.
I also picked Thomas Newman's score for all the reasons you just said.
Wow, man.
Yeah, I think it's really propels the film into a beautiful and moving experience.
That's really great, man. Really happy to hear that.
Oh my god. But yeah, this is great. This is a great movie. It's really fun. I can see why it won our bracket list as the champion of all animated films, and it deserves all the success it has. It was a genius concept, and they pulled it off beautifully.
Tons of great jokes. It even ends with a great joke with the fish in the tank. The fish is in the tank that they figure out a way to shut down that like high-tech filter, and then they're all put in the plastic bags while the dentist is going to clean the fish tank, and they escape, and they're all in the ocean just floating like, hey, we escaped, but they're still inside a low prison. It's really funny.
That was a great ending too.
Yeah, it's a great movie about growth, about friendship, about like trust, but and also not being afraid of challenging yourself and trying to see what you're capable of as a person, as a human being. And it's got so many great messages inside of it. And that's what I love about Pixar films is that you really learn a lot. They have a lot of great life lessons, not just for kids, but also for adults. That's, I think, a great strength of this movie as well. It's a great learning lesson for adults as well, to not be too overprotective of your kids, not hold them back, let them fly, man. I'm a peacock. I gotta fly.
Gotta let me fly.
But we love this movie. It's so fun. I was surprised it got picked as the #1 movie of all animated film of all time in our Discord. But hey, man, people like what they like, and I wasn't upset about it. I was like, yeah, sure, I could see that for sure. It's one of my favorite Pixar movies.
After watching it again, I can be like, okay, I can see why it's so well loved.
It's definitely in my top 5 for Pixar movies all time. I think those early Pixar films for me, I think obviously growing up with them, it's kind of like who your favorite Doctor Who is whoever was your first Doctor Who. Like, so obviously Matt Smith for me. But I think for the early Pixar films, I just love them so much. I think they're great stories, and this one is just, they knocked it out of the park, Anthony.
They knocked it. They're firing on all cylinders.
You got any fun facts and trivia?
We went through it all.
Yeah, I think we did go pretty much through all of it. Yeah, you're right. Here's a little one. The dentist's diploma is from Pixar University School of Dentistry.
I love that. That's funny.
All right, well, that wraps our episode on Finding Nemo. Thanks so much for tuning into this one. I'm sure we're going to get some more Pixar and animated films done because we know you all love them so much and they're classics. Become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. And thanks for tuning in around the world.
Take care, everyone. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. This episode of Raiders of the Lost Podcast has been executive produced through Patreon thanks to Cody Moen, Calvin Cam, John A. Gratz, and Lauren Smertz. Thank you to our producers.
Thanks so much for tuning into Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button, leave a comment. Find us on all audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. Find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Raiders of the Lost Podcast. Be sure to check out one of these other videos right here for more content on our favorite films and breaking down all kinds of movie content. Thanks so much.